And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Survivor podcast. Ryan and I are live to discuss Survivor 47, episode 12, Operation Italy. What's up, Ryan?
Yeah, Dylan, I was going to say 2 words, Operation Italy. I have a Survivor flag behind me. It should be the Italian flag after that episode. I mean, we're going to talk about it, but that is going to go down as definitely one of the best moves, if not the best move of the new era thus far. And then obviously people are already starting to compare it to Survivor proper, the first 40 seasons, but I cannot wait to break down this incredible episode with you.
Yeah, this is going to be the most fun podcast we've had all year. I'm really excited that we got one of these. And it's so funny because how many times over the last few weeks have I been so worried about the rest of the season being boring? I was like, how in the world does Genevieve and Sam not go the next two? And then all of a sudden you have Sam taking Andy on the reward, and then magic happens. I mean, just unbelievable to watch from literally. I think, somebody mentioned that this episode ended up being like so much better than it even would have been already because we had the 90 minutes. We literally got to see every single step of the blind side between, them strategizing on what to do. The fact that they faked having an idol, Genevieve, like basically faking, like showing the idol for a split second. We got to see like all these little details that I think in a 60-minute episode, we don't necessarily see. So it was awesome to watch. It was one of the best moves that I have ever seen in Survivor. I'm not going to say that it tops some of the best ever, but I do think that if certain players that are left do win the game, then I do think that it could be considered like a top 10-ish move in the history of Survivor. I thought it was that good. So excited to get into everything here.
I think the reason why all of us are sitting here saying it's an all-time move and it was so incredible, I think it's because I mean, look, is it like a brand new move? No, I mean, we've seen people try to get people to split the votes and then they flip. So this is not like a brand new concept. I think, Dylan, what makes it so exciting and awesome is that it could have gone wrong, to your point, in so many different ways. And we'll get through all those as we go through the episode. But basically, one little thing and this doesn't work. And that you can go to like how Sam and Genevieve apologized to Andy early in the episode. It could be whether Sue and Rachel play their advantages and idols, if Andy's on the wrong side of the vote. Like, we can go through all that, but any one thing goes different, this move completely fails. And it's the fact that like nothing went wrong and it all worked out and it was also intentional made it that much more exciting.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I mean, Genevieve had that confessional where she's like, there's so many different things that could go wrong, right?
Yeah.
If Rachel plays the block a vote, if somebody plays an idol, right? It's like so many different things could go wrong. If they suspect that the idol is fake, if Andy just simply flips back and just doesn't go for it, if the split votes doesn't actually work and the Women's Alliance teams up and says, you know what, we're going to throw 4 votes on Sam because we're worried about a potential flipper, right? So there's just so many different things that could have gone wrong. And the fact that it worked is unbelievable. I will tell you, I did not think this move was going to work. I thought that it was a misdirect for what was going to be an easy vote out. That's what I really thought.
Yeah.
And then literally as soon as I saw the second Genevieve vote, I was like, oh my God, it actually worked. Like I could not believe it. And even, another thing that could have gone wrong was, they made, I'm sure obviously Andy played a role in this, but if Andy is on the 2 side of the vote split and not the 3 side, then he can't split. Right. And then it makes it harder for the plan can happen. So it's just what a ridiculous move. Like truly so many different things that could have gone wrong, like you said.
And that's a great point, Dylan, too, because obviously we have to give Andy the most credit and we have to give Genevieve and Sam a ton of credit as well, because they all did their parts. They all did a great job strategically. But we can also agree, like you just mentioned with the split, there's luck involved. And Tom Westman famously said that back in the Heroes versus Villains finale, and I think it was great because that's when Danielle it was Colby who first said to Russell in the final tribal, like, Russell, do you believe you had any luck involved? And Russell's like, no, I didn't. And Colby's like, you're crazy if you think if there's no luck involved. And then I remember in the reunion, Tom Westman doubles down and Tom's like, the game is a third physical, a third social strategic, and it's a third luck because you cannot get to the end without luck. And to your point, if Andy's on the wrong side of that vote, that plan doesn't work. And if he pushes too hard to get on the right side of the vote, he looks suspicious. And the other thing about luck I want to say, Dylan, is like you mentioned, Genevieve shows Teeny the fake idol, and she kind of like sneaks it a little bit and shows her. But it also goes wrong if Teeny says, well, can I see it in more detail? Can I see the note? And it's only because Rachel or somebody comes down the path, she puts it back in her pocket. Like Teeny goes, okay, well, I didn't see it fully, but I know she has something. So there was a lot of luck involved as well, but that made it even more exciting.
Yeah, I think, I was also nervous that Andy was pushing too hard for the split, right? I think the edit made it seem to us like he kept asking for it, where I just think like they probably just showed every time he did ask for it to us to make it seem like that, right? But he was asking a lot for a split. And I was wondering, like, how did this not seem suspicious? There were so many things that I was like, this seems a little bit suspicious, right? I think, like, even when, Genevieve was, like, kind of showing Teeny the fake idol, and Sam was standing right there, I was like, shouldn't this set off red flags that something's not right here if Sam is standing right here, right? So there was just so many things that I thought should have set off red flags that maybe did, but I guess they were all just so confident that they had the numbers and that it wasn't going to play out perfectly like this. And yeah, I thought Andy was pushing too hard, but as we heard in Caroline's exit press, the goal of that group was to make Andy feel like he was not the fifth one in the group, right? So they thought they were just going to let Andy do what he wanted. This tribal, they didn't actually think he was going to make a move like this. Caroline said, we all thought that taking out Genevieve was a huge move in the game. So Caroline said, let's let Andy orchestrate a move for Genevieve. Said he seems like he made the big move. He's happy he made the big move. And now he feels more included in our group. Little did she know, obviously she knew it was a possibility, but she didn't think it was actually going to happen, was Andy making a bigger move than just getting out Genevieve.
Yeah. And look, we can obviously talk about, and as we go through the episode, we'll also obviously look ahead to next week with part one of the finale, but everyone's obviously is going to ask the question of like, yes, obviously this was the right move for Sam and Genevieve, clearly. And obviously this was a great move, or it was a great move from Andy, and people might ask, was it the right move? Was it the right time? Because obviously now he's made a big mark on the game. You see the jury saying like, oh, that was Andy. So Andy's clearly made a mark in the game. If he gets to the end, I don't know if Sierra will still be bitter at him, but clearly the jury sees Andy's game now, which is great. People are going to look ahead and say, well, should he have done this move? Because now what happens is you're heading into next week, which we'll talk more about, but you're now at a 3-3 split with the Underdog Alliance, which I guess if they were the big alliance, you can't really let them call it the Underdog Alliance, but the Teeny, Sue, and Rachel side of it now has two idols and a block of vote between them. And I don't think those girls are flipping. So now, as we look ahead, Andy, Sam, and Genevieve are going to have to do something really creative or find some type of hardware, because I don't know how all three of them get through next week. So that's the question, Dylan, where it's like, we always ask the question coming onto this podcast, was this the right move? And I think we would say, yes, clearly the right move for Andy, Sam, Genevieve. But now they're all like in a very rough spot again next week. And Andy with his betrayal could be in a tough spot. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think, so here's my thought on it all. I think that there's another layer to this, relating to this, on why this was such a good move for Andy. This is not going to be long-term for Andy, I don't think, this 3. I could be wrong on that. If I were Andy, it would not be long-term, right? I think the other part of taking out Caroline, right? You take out Caroline, so Caroline was a legit threat to beat you in the end. I think we pretty much saw it, and we heard Caroline say it, and I do think she's right. Caroline was a threat to win the game. I think she was super well-liked. Everyone saw her as really rational, logical, played a great strategic game. You take out a huge threat while also keeping the two biggest threats in the game. I still think that everyone out there is going to perceive Sam and Genevieve as the two biggest threats left. Because think about it, we saw all the behind the scenes of this. Everyone on the beach did not, right? So they could look at this move. They could see that Andy flipped. But do they really know out there that Andy was the one who came up with the entire plan, right? Do they know that, right? So even if, is Andy going to claim it as his own move, then they'll know. But I still think that they're going to perceive Sam and Genevieve as the two biggest threats, the players that they have to get out, right? So if I'm Andy, you take out a huge threat to win the game while still keeping the two perceived biggest threats in the game ahead of you. And now if they go boom, boom right next, then you're sitting there in the final four if you're Andy. And I think that was the goal of this move. And I think that I wouldn't be surprised if he does end up voting for Genevieve or Sam in the next episode, right? So that's my thought on everything. So I think he could flip back. Yeah.
I think he has to be like, and I know there's more examples other than this, but this is only one that came to my mind. He has to be like in that Tony Wu like pendulum thing where it's like Tony swings one way, votes out one alliance, and he backstabs the other alliance, and he comes back to this alliance, and the kind of pendulum goes back and forth. I think Andy's going to have to do that because Andy, now when we talk about the advantages, nobody knows, especially now that Carolyn's gone, nobody knows Sue has the idol. Everybody knows Rachel has a block of vote. The alliance knows she has a block of vote, and also Andy told Sam and Genevieve. So everyone in the game knows about Rachel's block of vote. They don't know about her idol. So if you're Andy, because I do agree with you, I think actually if I had to make my prediction right now, even though last week we were wrong, is I think one of Andy, Sam, or Genevieve are gone next week because Andy's going to realize. And by the way, I want to give Andy even more credit because I think, he had his little manic episode in the first episode, but clearly I think everybody can agree with the way Andy looks at the game. He got that confessional with like the equations. He's a very smart player and knows what he's doing. He's going to realize in a 3-3 split with Rachel having a block of vote, even if Sam or Genevieve or Andy win immunity, they're going to get, unless they find a new idol in the game, there's no way they can overcome that, especially with a block vote. Because even if, let's just say, even for the sake of argument, even if like they find a new idol and Teeny, Rachel, and Sue all pile their votes on the other person, like if they block the vote, it's not going to matter. It would still be potentially like a 2-2 split at that point or whatever. So I do think I agree with you. And he's going to have to realize I'm going to have to swing back and I'm going to have to take out a big threat in Sam and Genevieve, but then maybe he'll come back the other way and get rid of like Sue or Teeny or Rachel the next time. I don't know, but
yeah, we see like we see the preview where it looks like it's like Rachel versus Genevieve next week. I do think I can't see how like it's tough because I think from our screens, right? Andy is at this point like almost as big of a threat as Genevieve and potentially a bigger threat than Sam, right? So I do think that it is in everybody's best interest to also not let Andy get to the end. But I just think the perception out there is that you have to, like, if Genevieve sits at the end, she is the winner of the season. Like you can't, you're not overcoming that, right? So Genevieve has to go. I think the perception is the same way, almost the same as of Genevieve as it is with Sam for the people on the beach. Okay. I don't think Sam has a great chance to win this game. Right. Yeah. And if I'm out there right now, I'd be, and like, if I'm the underdog alliance, if I'm Teeny, if I am Sue, and if I am Rachel, I am focused on getting Genevieve out and then Andy out and then deal with Sam at final four. Okay. The issue is I think that they're worried about Sam potentially winning challenges, right? He hasn't won individual immunity yet, but he has won rewards. We saw it, right?
Yeah.
I think that they're worried about Sam's friends on the jury. If Sam does get there, he's going to get Sierra's vote. He could get Saul's. Yeah. I think like pretty much everybody respects him. And for a player that, looks like Sam, like big, big, strong guy, young guy like that, it's very not often for that archetype to get to the end. So I think people do see that as threatening. So again, I think Sam and Genevieve will still be the top two targets next week. And I don't think Andy would mind flipping back and getting one of them out as long as it advances him further in the game. And then from the other side of things, right, is that obviously everybody else out there, meaning Genevieve and Sam, that too, their pitch to everybody else is going to be Rachel needs to go. Rachel needs to go. The issue is the block vote, which has to be used now. It might be hard to overcome.
Exactly, because that's the thing. Where the idols are still good through final 5, the block vote has to be used at 6. So she's going to use it no matter what this week, and people know that. So the next week will be very interesting. And the thing about Rachel is I do think she's still a very big threat. I don't know with this new move if I still have her as like the number one best chance to win the game. I think she still is obviously top 2. I think she has a great chance to win. And I think if she gets there, she will win. But this is now a couple of times, and I hate reading into the edit, but this is now a couple of times where she's been left out of a vote and she's been blindsided. And again, I said this last week, we have winners like Jam, like Kenzie. We've had winners in the new era, be left out of votes and they still win the game, like obviously. But now this is a couple of times with the Annika vote, with the Sierra vote, with this now Carolyn vote. It's been a couple times Rachel's been left out, and I do think she's still a threat. I do feel like the game is not as flawless as I was once thinking. But again, in this game of underdogs and, Sam and Genevieve trying to scrap their way back, I mean, Rachel still has a pretty good shot. She's still going to be a target on the board next week because Genevieve wants to go after her. Andy still sees her as a threat. Sam sees her as a threat. So that's why I think, like you mentioned, next week we see the Genevieve versus Rachel war continuing. It is interesting because I do think Rachel's a big threat, but I do think when the jury gives her some questions, I don't think she's been as in control as the players want to believe.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. I think with Rachel, I think that she has the best path to the end simply because her advantages. And I do think that she has the best chance to win simply because she has the most paths to get there, right? She has the easiest path to get there. I think if she gets to the end with a bunch of combinations of people, like what it would be, I think she has the most combinations that she would win. I feel like she has the best chance. Again, like nobody knows about her idol still. I think there's a decent chance that if, she's going to be safe probably from the vlog, unless everybody on the islands, Teeny and Sue included, are like, you know what? It's over for Rachel. Like this underdog alliance is not going to work. Rachel's a huge threat. We just have to get her out. Like, and then Teeny and Sue also pile on, and then the block vote actually doesn't matter. Then Rachel's obviously cooked at 6. I cannot see that happening. I don't think Teeny and Sue are sitting there. Like Rachel is the big threat right now after what just happened. So I think Rachel is going to successfully use a block of vote. It is going to successfully impact a vote. And I think that, she's safe next week because of that. She's going to be able to hold her idol to 5. There's a chance at 5 because nobody knows that she has the idol. There's a chance that all the votes go on her at 5 and she simply chooses who goes home. And then, you know what? She's sitting at final 4 and it's going to be either based on immunity, which she's won several of, or she has to go into a fire making challenge, which we don't really know what her fire making skills are. I'm sure they're pretty solid based on her being good at everything. So I think she has the most paths to the final 3, which is why I think she has the highest % chance to win. Obviously, that could go completely wrong if all of a sudden everyone just sees her as the biggest threat and they just vote her out right now and she doesn't see it coming. Or she could lose in fire, obviously. But I think she has the most paths, which is why I think she has the best chance to win. So
yeah, and I think in terms of the edit, because I also agree with you, even though Sam and Genevieve still have a very tough, you just talked about roads, and Rachel has a fairly, not simple road, but I think she has options to get herself there. Sam and Genevieve still have a very tough path to still get to the end. And if they get there, they could win. I mean, listen, we're heading into the finale, and I know we still got to go through some things in the episode, but I think after this week and what the edit's showing us, and I could be wrong, again, I think there's only 2 people out of the 6 that I don't think are going to win. And I think one of them is Sue, obviously, but I think the other one is Teeny. And Teeny could still win because I think Teeny has friends on the jury like Sierra and Saul. I just think the way that they showed Teeny this week, I really think that did a big knock on her chances because she got the classic, like, Sam made a mistake. This was Sam's game. I can't wait to send Sam home, and like kind of got like the egg on her face. And I think that that's a bad sign for the edits because not only as I was making the notes for this podcast, Dylan, I actually forgot about this because the whole episode was about Operation Italy. Yes, I know in the episode we see after the reward, Sam doesn't pick her and she goes on a whole Liz-like rant about Sam is this. Sam is like, he's like the frat guy. We don't like him, all that stuff. And she's really just ragging on Sam. And it's like, oh, this is, because Sam's a pretty nice guy. I mean, Sam, like, he's the underdog and he was on the bottom, but I don't think Sam's done anything that wrong. But I forgot, Dylan, earlier in the episode that she talks to Genevieve on the beach. And basically, this was like 2 sides of the same coin where Genevieve apologizes to Andy about underestimating him. And I think that was pretty big. We see Genevieve try to also talk to Teeny, and that does not go nearly as well because Genevieve basically is like, I think Rachel's the biggest threat in the game. And Teeny's like, oh, so if I was sitting there next to Rachel, you would vote for her over me? And Genevieve's like, yeah, I probably would. And Teeny's like, I can't believe you would say that. That's horrible. Like, why would you say that about me? You're not respecting my game. And it's like, I mean, again, Teeny has a right to feel that way because, you don't want to hear potential jury members not respect your game because then you won't get the votes in the end. But I really do feel like the way she reacted to both Genevieve and Sam was a little bit of a knock on her potential winner edits.
Yeah, I think, I forget whether it was Genevieve maybe said it after that moment or Teeny said it, but Teeny is playing the game very emotionally. I think she's trying to like get away from that, but that the move with Genevieve, or I don't even want to say move, that interaction was not great for Teeny. And then obviously the whole Sam thing, and then the vote not going her way. I think I was team Teeny basically this entire season. I thought Teeny had a great chance to win. I think that I don't want to say drawing dead, but no, yeah. I think that Teeny's chances like fell off a cliff after that episode. Basically, as my brother stated in the text to us, I think one of the reasons why this move was just so entertaining is that we went from what we thought was going to be kind of a boring ending, and now with like maybe like one or two players having like clearly having a chance to win. Now I think basically at T's expense, you have four players who could absolutely win if they get to the end, whether it be Rachel, whether it be Andy, whether it be Sam, whether it be Genevieve. So I think it's way more wide open now, which is awesome. But unfortunately for Teeny, the chances for her do not look great.
Yeah, and listen, I still think Teeny has a chance. Like, obviously, if she ends up in the final three with Sue and... Actually, the best case for Teeny would have been to be there with Sue and Caroline, because then their games would have been similar. But Teeny still has a shot. I just think, to your point, the chances have really the odds makers have really declined Teeny's chances here. I still think she's above Sue, because after Kyle's gone, Sue's whole arc has kind of just been nothing really. So I agree with you. I think those four that you mentioned have the best shot to win. Teeny has, I think, no pun intended, I think she has a tiny chance to win. And I think Sue's the one where I don't think Sue has a shot. But yeah, no, I do think one of those other four are going to be our winner as of right now.
Yeah. I completely, I do agree with that. Let's talk a little bit about, I think Caroline in her exit press, she said that she was the one that actually told Sue not to play the idol on her. Because I guess she had confidence that it was going to work. She wanted to save the idol, but it's tough because, in my opinion, and again, this is a testament to Andy and how good he played this. Genevieve, how good she played this. Sam, and how good he played this. What better opportunity are you going to have if you're Sue and Caroline to use that idol? It's so easy to say in hindsight, but also like I really thought Sue was going to potentially play it for her. So I think at this point with Sue's idol, I mean, what's even the point? What does she even do with it, right? She doesn't have an ally that she could play it on. She'll probably play it on herself at like final five just to ensure her spot. But I thought that was a golden opportunity that we were getting all the ways that it couldn't work, and they did feed us like, oh, Sue was considering playing the idol. I thought that she was actually going to play it for her. So that was just, I think that was Sue's chance to successfully use the idol, and now I think it's basically a useless idol for her.
Yeah, and like, yeah, Sue probably wants to use it for herself at 6 or 5, and I know people hate to burn idols, but like after last season, clearly, I think it's obviously worse to go home with it in your pocket than I think just kind of taking a shot and then letting it go to waste. Because like, what's the worst thing that happens if you're Sue? The worst thing that happens is like you use it on Caroline here. Obviously, this would have blocked the move, and then what would have happened then if Sue blocked? It would
have been a tie vote for Sam and Genevieve.
Yeah, like so
revoted and one of them goes home. Yeah.
And if you're the Alliance, and even if you think Andy's with you and Rachel's safe, and and no offense to other people, like who is the person who Sam and Genevieve are going to try to go after now that Rachel's safe? I feel like logically they should realize Caroline's the next biggest thing they would go after. And if they took Andy on reward, they were trying to use Andy. I don't think they would like if you are Teeny and Sue and Caroline and them. Who do you think they're writing down now that Rachel's safe? Obviously not Rachel. They're probably not going to waste their vote on Sue. And Andy, they try to pull on reward. They didn't know that it ended up working. But the only two names you could write down, honestly, if you're Sam or Genevieve in their minds, is Caroline or Teeny. And I feel like with her bond with Sue, Caroline's scarier. So if I'm Sue and I know Sue's not been presented to us as like, like a super fan game bot, but like, you got to realize if I just use my idol on Caroline, it could save her, and they obviously would have stopped the move. If they didn't vote for Caroline, they voted for Teeny, I burned the idol. But like, I don't know. I just feel like now, like to your point, Dylan, what does she do with this? She saves herself, but she has no real equity with it. And I think just kind of using it would have been better than just letting it go to waste now. But
yeah, that was tough. That was tough. Again, it's not easy to foresee a move like that coming, but I just don't see what would have been a better time to use. Like, what other better chances she can have? I guess maybe she thought that she was gonna save Caroline eventually at Final 6 or Final 5. That's probably what I'm guessing. But yeah, that was the other thing that I was like.
And by the way, the other argument is like to now turn it to Rachel. It's like, now what was her reasoning for not using the block a vote? Maybe because she wanted to just use it at the last time that she could at 6. But like, again, if you are Rachel, not to kind of give her blame, but like, is there a better time to use it than now? Because you have the 5 of you and the 2 of Sam and Genevieve, and you're going to split the votes. And like they kept saying in the episode, all it takes is one person to flip for us to get exposed. And Andy flipped. Whereas if you use the steal a vote, the plan cannot work no matter what. So I actually feel like, to give Rachel a little piece of blame as well, if you use the block a vote here, yes, you don't think they're going to pull Andy, but even if they do pull Andy, they can't do anything if you steal one of their votes. So I think that also Sue could have used the idol, but I think actually more importantly, Rachel also could have used the block a vote here.
Yeah, I think the thing with Rachel is, yes, you're 100% right. She does deserve blame for not using the block a vote here. The other thing with Rachel is that I think I've heard this point made on several different podcasts that I've listened to so far. And the common sentiment seems to be that if Rachel did not win immunity here, then she would have been, she would have used the block a vote, or right? Because I think when you don't feel safe, when you don't have safety, you feel more at risk. You're like, all right, if a flip happens, then maybe I'm screwed. Like I'll use the block a vote to ensure it. Whereas her having immunity, she's like, all right, if this plan doesn't, like in the back of her mind, she's like, all right, if the plan does go wrong, like I'm still here tomorrow and I'm still probably in a fine spot. Right. And I still have the block a vote for Final 6, which is huge because it'll be a 3-3 potentially. And that could be a huge swing. Then I'll have the idol at 5. So I think her having the immunity there, it's like in the back of her mind, it's like, all right, like if it doesn't work out for me, I still have the block a vote and I'm still safe, right? Whereas if she didn't win immunity there, then I think Rachel is like, all right, maybe it is me tonight. I need to ensure it's not me. I need to ensure that flip doesn't happen. I'm going to use the block a vote now. Anyway, she wins immunity. Advantages doesn't happen. And yeah, but I think that was an interesting point that I heard made on other podcasts. I think Rob and Steven were the ones that brought up the fact that she probably just simply felt safe. Like her having immunity really just changed her line of thinking.
Yeah. And the other interesting thing is, like, to your point, if Rachel doesn't win immunity, Operation Italy is going to go on Rachel, and probably Rachel goes home because, to your point, I don't know if she would have felt in danger enough to use her idol there. Because again, no one knows about her idol at all. And if she loses that challenge, let's just say, Caroline wins that, Teeny wins that, whatever, then it's like, okay, Operation Italy is going to go after Rachel as the plan stated, 3-2-2. And I still think it would have worked anyway. Obviously, the one thing that could have derailed that was if Rachel uses the idol on herself. And I guess that's a question for you. Like you said, she didn't use the block of vote because Robin and Steven also felt like she didn't feel like she needed to use it. Do you think if she lost that challenge with how much her name has been thrown around, do you think she would have used her idol?
I don't think she don't think she would have used the idol, but what I was saying before is I think she would have used the block a vote, right?
If she lost immunity?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's what I was saying. So I think that the reason why none of her advantages were played is because she lost. Or because she won, I should say.
She won, yeah.
It's funny because the original target was originally on Rachel, but I do think that Rachel winning immunity is a potential reason why nothing went wrong, right? Why the plan did work. The other thing that I thought was super interesting is that obviously if Sam or if Genevieve win immunity, then this plan cannot work. And Sam made it pretty clear on Twitter that him and Genevieve threw the challenge to make sure that the plan could work. So just next level thing. We could talk about this move for 2 hours. There's just so many different aspects of the move that happened, the reasons why it worked. That's another reason, right? They both threw the challenge. And one other thing that I thought was brilliant that I'm curious to hear your thoughts on now is we heard Genevieve and Sam acting at tribal council, right? Genevieve is like looking at Sam. Sam's like, play it. And she's like, no, I feel okay right now. Doesn't play her fake idol, right? And now I'm wondering, one thing that we didn't even mention, are people going to go back to camp and be like, wow, Genevieve still has an idol? Is that going to be a thought, right? I'm just so curious about that. Or is Andy going to simply just go back, flip, and tell everyone else, no, Genevieve made a fake idol for the move. Let's vote her out, right? So that's one of the biggest question marks going forward. Are people going to realize that or know that Genevieve's idol is fake? And I think that they could keep the lie going depending on what Andy thinks or what Andy does.
If I'm Rachel in the alliance, I'm probably thinking to myself one of two things. Either that idol is fake, because if it was real, you would have used it, because obviously you and Sam were in danger, or it is real and you were so confident that you had the vote or you had Andy that you didn't play it, and now you have something in your pocket for you to use against us at Final Six. Because like, if that was, let's just pretend that was real for a second, they would have been like, you have to have big Dan Campbell like cojones to not use an idol there if you are that much in danger. So they're probably thinking it's real and she really believed she had Andy, or it's fake, because like, how could you not use an idol in that spot? Obviously, like you mentioned, I got to give Genevieve and Sam credit for acting and being like, oh, should you use it? No, I feel okay. And she's kind of like falling on the sword in some way. But it's also great because even if she I don't know, for some reason, if she used the fake idol and burned it, that could also have like spooked Sue or whatever into being like, oh, well, shoot, she had the fake one. Now I got to use it on Caroline. So yeah, no, a lot of interesting things. And that's why, again, like we said earlier, every single thing mattered for this to kind of work out. But
yeah. If I had to guess, everyone's going to realize it was fake, but I don't think that there's it's not like a insane possibility to think that people could still believe it is real, given the fact that it was not played, given the fact that they're both still there. It was acted up well. And Andy is basically the only one that will confirm whether it was fake or real. So if he decides for whatever reason that he still wants to work with Sam and Genevieve, then, maybe that's a way that they try to get around the block of vote. Who knows? I'm trying to think of other things. What do you want to talk about next? Because I have a few things I want to bring up still.
I was going to quickly mention the reward just for one quick second. And then I'm curious what you have to say as well, because obviously I want to also give Sam credit, because obviously he was going to pick Genevieve no matter what, obviously, because they're both in the bottom. But him picking Andy obviously is what made this whole move happen. And I think this move also happens because both Sam and Genevieve at different point in the episodes apologized to Andy in terms of underestimating him, in terms of not being a good alliance member. And I think Andy needed to hear that, because I think the whole reason Andy flips on Sam and also kind of flips on Genevieve as well is because he hears how they kind of talk about him. And like we always say in this game, if you don't manage your alliance members and you let that number slip, that's a big flag. And I do think that Sam and Genevieve apologizing to Andy made this happen. And then him also taking Andy to kind of like make amends and to also like, I'm keeping my promise, was obviously great. But what I will also say about the reward, Dylan, is like, I would be also pissed in a little way if I was Sam, because I think Jeff didn't reveal that they were going to get letters from home until after Sam won, right? Because didn't he say like, you're going to get an Italian feast? And then when he's like, all right, Sam, you're going to pick somebody.
Correct.
And by the way, letters from home. I would have been pissed, because I've always told you in the post-merge, I never want to win a reward where I have to like pick people, because like if it's like a team reward where it's like, the team of Ryan, Dylan, and John, like they win reward, I'm fine with that because we won as a team. But if I have to pick people, I don't want to make someone like Teeny mad at Cam, because then Teeny at this point may never vote for Sam regardless, whether Sam's the end. Teeny may just never give Sam her vote. And I've always said to you, back when we used to have loved ones visits, I would never want to pick people when there's loved ones and also with letters. And I would be actually a little bit upset if I was Sam to realize, crap, I didn't know that love letters were on the line. Now I got to pick somebody. But I don't know if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think, at first I thought it was honestly puzzling puzzling to take Genevieve and Andy, because I was like, he knows he has Genevieve already. Why not take, like, in my opinion, maybe I was just delusional to think this. I was thinking like, I feel like you take one of Caroline and Sue and hope that you could get both of them to flip, right? Because they are a duo. So in my opinion, if I were Sam, I would have probably been thinking like, oh, let's try to get both of them over. Yeah. This way we could be up in the numbers, and let's try to bring one of Caroline and Sue, if not both of them, and try to cook up a plan that way. But Sam's like, Sam knows Andy well. Obviously, they started on the same tribe together. So I guess just him realizing that, he could convince Andy, or, Andy was potentially going to be on board if they apologized. That was an amazing read by Sam, and one that, I think from sitting on our couch, we were even potentially questioning at the time. So I think Sam deserves all the credit in the world for making a perfect reward choice, like literally perfect. I think this is something that gets, criticized all the time. It's like, if there's a reward and then a vote goes one way, we're sitting here and we're like, oh, well, should they have taken the other people? Like, no, this literally worked to perfection.
Also, by the way, I think the other reason why I think some people online were a little bit not mad at Teeny, but I think some people were like they couldn't believe Teeny was reacting in that way. I think I forgot, Dylan, and I just went back to Wikipedia to confirm this. If you include the Earn the Merge feast or whatever it is, I'm pretty sure Teeny's been on almost every single reward or has had food every single time except for one other time before this. So it's like, I think that's also why people were kind of like surprised that she was acting that way, because it's like you also have probably had the most rewards so far in the game. But
yeah, it was somebody's. I saw a tweet that was like, letters at home have people acting wild like they always do. I'm just gonna show up put this comment up here because it actually leads into exactly what I was gonna talk about next.
Sure. Yeah.
So Nate 9-9 says in the chat, final 3 with Rachel, Andy, and Genevieve would be crazy, but that likely won't happen. Yeah, I want to, this is what I wanted to bring up next. Like, if we want to go through kind of each player's path to what we think would be a potential win, and if you want to start with Genevieve, because let me say before we get into this, we're at a point where it's tough because every season, like there's always like a player or two that I really like, and then it gets recency bias. But I think Genevieve might be my favorite player of the new era. I love watching Genevieve play ever since the Keyshawn vote, where I was like, that was so awesome that she kind of came out of nowhere. She wasn't on our screens for the first 2 episodes, and then boom, like Keyshawn, boom happens. Genevieve has made 3 moves in this game that I think take other Survivor players 2 or 3 seasons to accomplish. And she's done it all in 1 season. She had the Keyshawn vote. She had the Soul vote. She had now Operation Italy, which is a huge part of. Having 3 moves like that on your resume is absolutely insane to do in 1 season. It is unheard of. You do not see it often. And I think, that combined with like Genevieve's character, where I literally love watching her on the screen, just in terms of, her confessionals are always so interesting to me. I think her character arc has been super interesting to watch her, like, talking about not having friends. We were literally laughing at that. She's like, I don't have any friends. Like, but like now she realizes like this episode, her, kind of making friends is why this happens, like at the reward, right? So I think she's had such a cool arc also.
Yeah.
But regardless of that, Genevieve for season 50 has to happen. But regardless of that, Genevieve's path to win, I think, is, like I said, if she sits in the final 3, she wins. I think her path to get to the final 3 is almost non-existent. I cannot see how it happens. She would have to. Here's how she could get to the final 3. Here's what has to happen. She needs to hope that Sam or Andy is seen as a threat over her for this episode, right? Because again, I don't think that she's going to realistically be able to swing everybody on Rachel, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not acting like that's going to be realistic. If that did happen, of course, that's a viable option for her. I don't think that it's viable for her to vote out Rachel this episode. So she needs to hope that either Sam or Andy is a threat in final 6 right now to go over her. She sneaks to final 5. Maybe she pulls an immunity win out of nowhere. Maybe it's some kind of balance challenge that she hasn't really been good in challenges, but maybe she happens to pull one off finally at final 5. And then all of a sudden you're sitting in the final 4 and anything could happen. That's basically her only path, in my opinion, which I think is super unlikely. She would have to win immunity probably at the final 5 and hope that she could get there based on another threat being seen as bigger than her, which I cannot see. I cannot see how it happens at this point. I just can't. So I'm curious, do you think Genevieve, like obviously she has a shot if she gets there. What do you think is her most realistic path to Final Three?
So, I mean, obviously, especially ever since, Triple H with the Final Four fire making, all you have to do is just basically get yourself to 4 at this point. Because obviously you have 2 chances with the immunity and with fire making. So unlike in, Final 2 era, unlike in the pre-fire making era, you had to get your way to 2 and 3. All she has to do is get to 4. So to your point, how does she get to 4? She has to just survive 2 votes. And obviously if you win immunity, that already saves you 1 round. The way she gets there, other than kind of winning her way there, is obviously next week, especially with the block of vote and especially with the 2 idols. She's got to make sure, obviously, Sam or Andy go. Now, obviously, she would prefer to keep Sam because Sam's another shield in front of her, but I don't know if I still don't think all 3 of them can survive next week with all the ammunition that the girls have. So she needs to hope next week that Sam goes, or if I texted you and your brother this, it'd be so amazing. I would feel bad, but it'd be so amazing if like Andy helped Sam and Genevieve, and then Sam and Genevieve kind of like throw Andy under the bus and just be like, oh, now wait, we're going to get rid of Andy. They could basically play up on the fact that Andy betrayed the alliance and maybe see if they can get the votes on Andy in some way. That's how she survives next week. And then at Final 5, if she's still there with Sam, if Sam is still there at 5, she can easily make a case like, you guys got to get rid of Sam at 5 over me. I know I've played a hard game. You guys are threatened by me, but like, Sierra, I don't know if Sierra likes me. I betrayed Saul. Teeny's already mad at me. Sam has friends in the jury. I think that's her best case. Is she has to make sure Sam is still seen as a bigger threat than her, and either make sure Sam goes out at 6, or if she can keep Sam through 5, then make sure Sam goes at 5. I think that's her best chance to get there, other than like winning out, basically.
Yeah. How diabolical would that be if Genevieve and Sam all of a sudden go back to camp and are like, quietly go up to Rachel and quietly go up to Sue, Teeny. They're going to not be able to convince Teeny of anything, but quietly go up to the other 2 and are like, this was all Andy. Like, he came to us with this plan. We had to go along with it. Like, Andy's a way bigger threat than anyone's realized. Like, he needs to go. I almost feel like that would maybe even be the right move, right? Like, if you're Sam and Genevieve, you just need to just keep pushing other threats in front of you. So it is not unfathomable for that to happen. But again, I do feel like it is like wide open. Like something like that theoretically could happen, which is why this is so exciting. This Final 6 is just so exciting. But I do think, that's Genevieve's pretty much only path. I do think that, if we're looking at Sam's path, it's similar to Genevieve, right? Either win out immunity or make sure Genevieve or Andy go before you and hope you get to the final 4 fire making, and then either can win immunity again or make the fire and win. So I think Sam and Genevieve both have us extremely. And here's the thing: is I would say they both have similarly unlikely paths to the final 3, as long as Sam is still seen as this big threat, which it appears he is. Do you agree with that with Sam? I think that his path is basically the same as Genevieve's. It's like you either have to convince others that you are not the biggest threat, or you have to win out.
It's what's so tough is Dylan, we do this every season because we've been podcasting now for 7-8 seasons together, and it's so tough because usually when we head into the next week or we head into the finale, we feel like we kind of, like you said, like we figure out like what's their path, like what's like what was Kenzie's path, what was Dee's path, like what are all these paths. And it's tough because next week, we both, you and I know, unless something, again, like Operation Italy, unless something crazy happens or unless a new advantage is put into the game, I don't know how Andy, Genevieve, and Sam all make it through, because you can't get through 2 idols and especially a block of vote that's going to get used no matter what. So that's my point when you're saying like what's their path. I almost need to like reevaluate it once we get through the final 6 vote, because I just don't see how those 3 get through without some new type of advantage. Now, it's interesting because when we come back next weekend, we're going to be at finale part 2. Because for those that, don't know the official press release, for the finale is going to be a part 1 and part 2, although I guess they said it in the preview. So part 1 is going to happen this week on December 11th. And then part 2 is going to be December 18th. Now, Dylan, I don't know any specifics because they could always hit us with a cliffhanger, But if you want to hear what was in like the press release,
yeah, no. I think from what I've heard, it appears that we're getting 2 immunity challenges, two vote outs. I think.
Well, here's the thing. That's what I wanted to ask you. Two challenges, and they said 2 tribal councils. Now, I would hope and believe we'll see 2 vote outs, like you just mentioned.
They're not gonna do a cliffhanger with a vote. No way. I think it'll be something like. I'm trying to think of what that was. There was one season recently. Maybe it was Winners at War, where like it had to be Winners at War. It was definitely Winners at War. Where I remember, do you remember like the penultimate episode of that season? We got that whole like montage to end the penultimate episode of like everybody on the edge. And they were kind of like talking about like everybody else's chances, I think. Do you remember that? Am I remembering that wrong?
Yeah. So what happened was the person that went out right before the finale in Winners at War, I think it was Nick, I believe. And then you're right. Nick gets voted out, but instead of just saying, all right. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but they brought somebody back from the edge at the beginning of the finale, so it was like everybody on the edge, like talking about to compete in the challenge. Like, if I come back, I could really win this game.
Yeah,
that was an awesome lead up to the finale. That was like perfect, and then it just ends right, and you're like, all right, you come back next episode, we're getting the challenge right away. This, I think it's gonna be like, I think that they may just end it after Tribal Council. I also think we might see the second Tribal Council happen, and then we get like a quick montage, like Final Four. Like, I feel like I have a great chance to win this game, and here's why. And then it goes to next week. So yeah, I don't think we're getting any cliffhanger. I can't see that. So we'll come back and podcast next week, and we'll have the Final Four, which is rare for a finale.
Yeah, because I think the most likely scenario, like you mentioned, is that we're going to get through 6 and 5 next week. And then the finale, because both of these episodes are going to be 2 hours each. We're not going to get the usual 3-hour finale. It's probably going to be 6 and 5 this week. And then for part 2, Final 4, Final 3, Final Tribal Council, and then the reunion, the after show. That's probably the most likely thing that's going to happen over the next 2 weeks.
So let's hear before we head off here. Let's hear your predictions for next week. Who are the 2 vote outs?
I will say, and I'm prepared to be fully wrong, I will say Sam goes out at 6. And I will say, it would be so boring if it was Sam and Genevieve. I'll say Sam, and then maybe I'll say Rachel. No, Sam and it's so hard.
It'll be tough because of the idol, right?
So yeah, I'll just get for the record, and then I'll hear your thoughts. I'll say Sam and Rachel.
Okay, so you think Rachel's going to go out even with the idol?
No, all right. I'll say Sam and Teeny.
Okay, I think for what it's worth, I'm going to predict. I'm going to predict Sam and Genevieve in some form, whether it be Sam first or Genevieve first. If I had to guess, I think Sam goes at 6 and Genevieve goes at 5. And again, if it weren't for Rachel's idol, I think that this could all play out differently. I think that she potentially is going to choose Genevieve just to go home at 5, and that like she's going to choose who goes home.
Is there any shot, because we both just kept talking about like Sam and Genevieve, potentially like Teeny, maybe even Rachel. So is there any shot you think Andy goes out at 6 or 5?
I think it's a shot. Yeah, of course it's a shot. But everybody else there has been so hell-bent on getting rid of Genevieve and Sam. And again, from their perception, not from our perception, from their perception, it was all 3 of them that made the move, right? At the end of the day, Sam and Genevieve still saved themselves from going out. They still played a huge part of that, right? We're seeing that it was kind of Andy's idea. He came and kind of convinced them both, like not really convinced them, but just like sold the idea and like, here's what we have to do. Whereas I think out there, they're probably seeing it as like Sam and Genevieve came up with this master plan and sold Andy on it. Whereas we kind of saw it the other way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, I still think that they're going to see Sam and Genevieve as a bigger threat than Andy. I think Andy is going to go to Final Four and potentially Final 3. So if I had to say right now, I'm saying Sam and then Genevieve next week.
Okay. Yeah. So I think we both agree that the only person that's not going to go out at 6 or 5 is Sue.
Yeah, I think Stu and Teeny have a pretty legit path to the final tribal council at this point. So
Yeah,
I think
I agree with that.
It's going to depend on who could get there with them, or we see something really weird and Teeny gets sent to fire. Well, Teeny could obviously, like, if let's say if somebody not named Teeny or Sue win immunity, obviously obviously I would assume Teeny gets sent to fire, right? And then it's like we could get 2 of the 4 big threats in final tribal, which would be awesome. Like if we had like Rachel and Andy at the final tribal council, that would be awesome to see. If we had like Genevieve and Andy there, Genevieve and Rachel, like if 2 of those people got to final 3, that would be really awesome to watch.
I mean, the problem is, Dylan, we'll see has there been like the whole glasses fire thing with Rachel, or because there was like the whole glasses Rachel fire thing, and then there was like.
But I will say, just because the fire's in the glasses, maybe she wins fire. For Carson, it was like he loses fire. He loses in fire. maybe for Rachel, it's like she's gonna win in fire, right? It doesn't mean that she's gonna lose in fire. I do think that just mathematically speaking, the odds are likely, like the probability is probably very high for her to be in fire, strictly because if we want to do some mystery math, call me Andy. We got to do some mystery math here. The odds are that she's safe at 6 and safe at 5 because of her advantages, right? So the odds are that she's getting the 4. And then mathematically, you have a 50% chance of being in the fire making challenge if you're in the final 4, right? Because 2 of people are headed to final tribal between the person that wins immunity and then the person that's dragged. She's not getting dragged there. So you could even say that her odds would even be higher than 50% if she gets to final 4. So I think that her odds to be in fire are pretty high. We'll see.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the great thing about this. And like you said this earlier in the podcast before we wrap up, it's like we needed this move, not just because it was great TV, not just because it was a great move, but because things were getting a little bit like pagonging, right? Like we lost Gabe, we lost Kyle, we were set up to clearly lose Sam, then Genevieve. We would have really had that all go out in a row, and then we would have been left with the underdog alliance. So this has really opened up the playing field. Now, again, next week we're going to have the advantages in the block of votes, so we'll see what happens at 6. But I can't wait to come back next week with you and talk about both the 6 and then the 5 tribal councils. So it should be exciting.
Yep. I think that's all I got for me. But yeah, good stuff. Really exciting episode. So glad we got to recap Operation Italy, and we will be back for the penultimate episode / part 1 of the finale next week.
Your favorite word, the penultimate episode, and then part 1 finale.
Yep.
Grab your torches and head back to camp.
Good night.